Freeman, and it's incomplete. Or did he make the catch at the 15? Yes. What are they going to rule it? He caught it? Touchdown! He did what?
The end zone. It is caught for the win. Richard Rodgers with a walk-off touchdown. Total disbelief at Ford Field.
Rushes on, has time. Looking, throws, middle, got it there. Breaking free to the 50. He may go all the way to the 20 down the right side. And there's Randall Cobb to the 5, to the end zone, to the touchdown. Oh my goodness.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Green and Golden Boys podcast, the Packers podcast for fans living in enemy territory. And this is Marcus, and with me is Charles.
Hello!
Hello, everybody. I love the enthusiasm. We're going to have a lot of that today. A lot to be enthusiastic about. Obviously, we're going to preview the NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field this coming Sunday. Green Bay Packers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, Charles, before we get into that, it's not exactly breaking news, and I'm not sure if you have heard, but Ted Thompson, former GM of the Green Bay Packers, did pass away yesterday.
Wow. Jeez. Actually, I think I saw that a little bit ago, but I didn't really read it. God, it's terrible.
Yeah, so it's awful. I mean, he was a hell of a GM for a long time for the Packers. His first pick as GM was that quarterback from California, Aaron Rodgers, who we've come to know and love. He led the Packers to 9 playoff appearances and obviously a Super Bowl victory. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family right now, and can't really say enough about what he did for this organization. He brought us a lot of success, and he's going to be missed. For
sure, yeah. I mean, similar move. We don't have to go into the Rodgers Favre, storyline, but yeah, I mean, just picking up a quarterback when we might not have needed a quarterback, and obviously the rest is history. And yeah, that's terrible.
Yep. So, Packers royalty lost one yesterday, unfortunately. But again, our thoughts and prayers are with his family, and can't thank him enough for everything he did. But with that said, let's move on to the NFC Championship game preview. Last week, we talked about this Packers and Rams game, and we said that Aaron Rodgers was 10-0 in games below freezing at Lambeau. Well, we can now move that up to 11-0. In games with freezing temperatures, including that Rams win. So I wanted to ask you this first. Do you think weather is going to be a factor this week?
I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. The last time I checked, I think the high was like 28 or something like that.
Right.
And if it's anywhere in the 20s, I feel like professional football players should be able to handle that. Will it give us an advantage? Yes. Are we more used to it? Yes. Will we hit something we didn't talk about last week? Fans. The most fans being in the stands. About 9,000, I think, total. That'll be the same case here this week. I think all of those small advantages with Green Bay will add up to something, and the weather will be part of it. But it's not the frozen tundra, and unless it's a snow globe, I don't think it'll be a heavy advantage for the Packers.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's a big storyline this week for a lot of pundits is the weather, but I really think it's going to be a non-factor. But I think when you combine everything, Packers being at home, sleeping in their own beds, in their own routine, fans in the stands, and then, cold weather and a little bit of snow, I think that all kind of adds up to being a pretty strong advantage for the Packers. But that being said, Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski played a long time in New England. They're no strangers to adverse weather conditions. I think I read today that one of Tom Brady's AFC Championship wins, one of the very few that were on the road a couple years ago, was against Kansas City, and the temperature was like in the teens, I want to say. Didn't affect him then. Obviously, he was away for that game, but we'll see how he plays. I think he's going to play pretty well. He's going to be efficient. I don't anticipate, the weather affecting him for sure.
No, for sure not Tom, but maybe some of these guys, catching the ball. You mentioned Rob, obviously Gronkowski. He's used to that. Rob Gronkowski also, though, is another older player who hasn't exactly been performing like he was when he was in New England. So that being said, some of these older guys and some of these guys who aren't quite as used to these big time games in this type of weather, maybe it'll affect them more. But there are definitely some players who are used to this weather that I'm a little bit more concerned about.
Yeah, and as unfortunate as it is for me to say this, I think a cold weather game probably bodes well for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just the way that they're built. But before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about their offense. I mean, they are hot. They are on fire. They have been averaging since week 15, including the playoffs, 36.6 points per game. And their week 14 game, I think they put up 26 points, so not that far away from 30. Now, you could make the argument that those last, I think, 3 regular season games were against subpar, subpar non-playoff teams. But anytime you're putting up, 40 points on a team, playoff or not, playoff team or not, I mean, that's a strong offense no matter how you look at it.
It's a strong offense no matter how you look at it, but the reason you got to play the game, obviously, right? So I'm not making huge sweeping statements here, but I'm also not just going to look at the score and be like, damn, they're hot, because you're right. I feel like on paper, these are very, very impressive wins. I know I listed these games off at one point in the last couple episodes, but to your point, the last 4 or 5 games, the Chiefs, I think, are the one outlier, obviously, but Vikings versus Falcons versus Lions versus Falcons, Washington. I mean, most of those teams fired their head coach by the time the Bucs are playing them. Now, the outlier is the Chiefs from last week in November, and then of course last week. And this is going to kind of show you where I think the most important part of this game is. I mean, I don't know how closely you watched that game. Yes, 30 points, of course, is impressive, especially on the road in New Orleans. But man, I got to give half the credit to the defense. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They were set up. Tom Brady and company was set up with short field after short field after short field. I mean, Breeze, I think, threw 4 picks. And really, it wasn't until their defense really stepped up and gave them 30-yard fields to work with. And they still had to settle for some field goals in that scenario where the Tampa Bay finally started putting points on the board. So I think that's the biggest contributor, and that's going to be my big takeaway this week is the turnover ratio. Who's giving the ball away more and whose defense steps up more.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And then just to set the record straight, I think he threw 3 picks, and then Jared Cook fumbled 1, I believe. So there were 4 turnovers in that game by the Saints, which is insane. So, and they were in it pretty much from the get-go. I mean, they were down by 10 at one point in the fourth quarter, but for the first 3 quarters, really, they were in that game. I mean, it was a 20-20 game at half, I believe, and it really feel like the Saints just kind of beat themselves, and this is kind of the thing.
That fumble, I think early in the third quarter that the Saints had basically almost was like a 10-point swing, right? I mean, there was a fumble where they were already in field goal position, and then they returned it like 40, 50 yards to get right back into, field goal position for the Bucs. And again, I feel like that was more of the indicator than the dominant offense of the Bucs.
Yeah, and I would agree for the most part, but at the same time, a good offense will capitalize on those opportunities.
Sure.
Okay. So while we're talking about the Bucs offense, obviously they've got a strong receiving core. They've got a couple of really, really talented playmakers in Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown. Don't get me started on Antonio Brown. I think it's garbage that he's allowed to play in the NFL, but that's another story. He's obviously got Gronkowski, who, to your point, hasn't been performing that well recently, but he's got another tight end in Brait who's been playing pretty well the last couple of weeks. And this brings me to my point. No matter who the guy is, Tom Brady will find you. He's one of the best ever at spreading the football around. He's a hard quarterback to pressure. He gets rid of the ball really quickly, and he's got so much presence and poise in the pocket that it just seems really hard to disrupt his rhythm.
Yep.
They've also got a really strong, two-headed monster in the backfield with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. Fournette's obviously coming on really strong lately, not only rushing, but as a receiving threat too. I think he had like almost 50 yards last week receiving in addition to like 60 yards rushing. So, I mean, again, they've got some playmakers on offense, some guys that are going to be tough to stop. So that has me a little bit concerned. I think they're definitely the toughest matchup between this, if it had been the Saints or the Buccaneers, but that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I feel good about this game, right? And we'll talk about predictions later, but I think the thing that makes me the most nervous is basically what you just laid out. Between Gronk, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, it just feels like a little bit of a fantasy football team where like any given day, one of these guys is capable of really going off, right? Almost by themselves. And that's, I think, the one scary thing. It's going to be hard, I think, for our defense to really focus in on any one of these aspects and really control it. And I feel like if we give too much attention to the tight ends, Antonio Brown is going to have himself a day. I think if we, try to control the run game too much, like we've had the last several games, again, I think these tight ends, these quick passes to the tight ends are going to have a big day. So I think it's going to be a tall order for Mike Pettin and this team. But I think, again, if we can control those turnovers when we have the ball and reduce those, I really like our chances in this one.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about this Bucs defense. So obviously they kicked our ass week 6 of the regular season, 38-10. Packers went up 10-0, and then the Bucs scored 38 unanswered. A lot of that, to your earlier point, has a lot to do with their defense. They forced Aaron Rodgers into some bad throws. He threw a pick 6 and then another interception, 2 picks in one game. Played the worst quarter of football in his entire career, probably. They've got a tough front. They have the number 1 rush defense in the NFL, which is going to be, a difficult task in and of itself. They have one of the best middle linebacker duos in the NFL with Devin White and Levante David. And they're one of the best top 5 in the league in takeaways. And we saw it last week. They took the ball away 4 times. I mean, this is a tough defense to go up against. But again, optimistic because we're also a tough offense to go up against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think specifically we're going to have a harder time running the ball, particularly to the outside, right? Really stretching the field. Those plays that we saw earlier in the year with the pre-snap motion and those jet sweep type things, I don't think works on this defense. Their linebackers are built for speed, and our offensive line, for how great they are, offensive linemen typically against a very quick athletic linebacker can't get out to that second level as quickly as they may want to. The Saints, the Vikings, and the Bears actually did pretty well running the ball against this team. Saints beat them, 2 times, and still did pretty well this last week. And what they did successfully is running the ball in between the tackles. So even though it sounds scary to say to do this against the number 1 run defense, I think what we're really going to have to see is that up, right up the middle. And I think any 3 of our running backs can do that efficiently, specifically AJ Dillon, if he's healthy enough to join us this weekend. But tacking that defense right up the middle, I think, is what we're going to have to do, even though it might not all be that successful, right? We just need to keep that balance and keep them honest so we can give Aaron Rodgers the opportunity to do that play action and throw the ball like he loves to.
Yeah, and I think that does another thing too. If you've got a front 4 like Tampa does, and you're able to run the ball up the middle, I think that's gonna give him a little bit of hesitation. That's gonna give him some pause. That's gonna give Aaron Rodgers a little bit more time, to your point, to make those throws. So on play action, if we have a run fake up the middle and then just have Jamal Williams line up in pass protection, that gives him a little bit more time and a little bit more protection in that situation. So if you're able to consistently run the ball up the gut, I think that's going to open up the offense a lot more. And to your point, I think we're going to see a lot more of that with Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon. And then obviously, Aaron Jones' best run of the day last week was right up the gut. So I think we're just going to pound the run, play action, take a deep shot. It's a formula that's been working for us. I think, LaFleur said he got away from